Maddie was like, she'd go over to other dudes who are like rowing 70-pound dumbbells and be like, hey, you done using that?
You done with this?
Excuse me, I'm up next. It was just like players, stuff like that. So
Wow.
that's what I first saw from Maddie. Like, dang, this woman is like honorable. She works hard. Doesn't care what people think.
Wow.
Within like a week of talking, Noah pops the question. He's like, hey, you want to be my girlfriend? I'm like, whoa. Like, this is really fast.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, yep, yeah, I'm sure. And then 24 hours later, I get this text like, hey, can we talk? And so I always make the joke, within the same 24 hours, Noah asked me out and then also broke up with me. But it was mutual.
Has about that much too, and the way that our culture sees love and romance and dating right now is far, far different.
He gave a story of, not to call it Will Smith, but to call out Will Smith. He's been in the news a lot lately, right? He gave this story of when he was married to his first wife. He was out to dinner with her, and he had this feeling.
Yeah.
That he realized, he came to realize in that dinner that he wasn't supposed to be married to this woman. And so he realized he was really in love with Jada Pinkett Smith, his now wife.
Wow.
And so he had a realization at dinner. He just left his wife that dinner, like that night.
Wow.
It's like he knew.
I didn't know that.
And so when you let feelings drive love, you get into a whole bunch of, you miss love entirely.
This is disruption.
It's not live, is it?
No.
Dude, we'd be in trouble, dude.
This guy just made a sexist joke over here.
Oh gosh, I'm fired.
You guys are on the bottom, man.
Dude, no one here has green texts, right?
No.
No.
We're not.
Oh.
We're not that crazy.
Do you guys think you could date if either one of you had green? If the other one had green text?
I would not
You probably
date
would have made it that
text.
far, right?
I would not
It'd be really
date
hard.
green
It'd be my
text.
cross, my burden.
No
So
way.
what are your guys' red flags? Green text.
When the text shows
Green
up.
text.
We're talking color, green.
Toxic.
That's disgusting.
Toxic texter.
Yeah.
Purple text. What?
Yeah, this is that person who like you send them a
That's
paragraph
that
and then they
Facebook
like it
Marketplace.
and it says Noah liked and then it repeats
And then
the
it
whole
said, yeah,
message.
exactly.
And you're
That's so funny.
Yeah, my small group
True.
leader actually has green texts. Thinking about finding a new small group leader.
Yeah, my small group leader has them, so I don't have a small group anymore.
needless to say, we
so
get rid of him.
It's so funny. Yeah. He's not with us
I left
anymore.
that cult.
Nice.
So yeah, basically when you guys talking to these,
I was gonna ask.
be like about that far away from it.
Okay.
Unless like some guys that come on, they have like a booming voice.
Yeah, you can sit. You can if you're just talking like this level, you can be here pretty much.
Yeah, he's got more of a booming voice.
I got that
and,
boomer,
And when I talk, I'm more so relaxed with it.
Yeah.
You know.
and I'm here.
Yeah.
What I do is
Listen up.
I'm the guy that's training to do the
ASMR.
and teaching yoga moves and stuff. And he's the
Drill sergeant.
he's the drill sergeant. Yeah.
I'll just be back here.
It's so funny.
Is it loud enough?
Please tell me we were recording.
Can you do that? Can you do that voice the whole podcast?
Oh, she's not okay with it.
And then at the end, you just
like, it's my husband over here.
Hey guys.
We talk about biblical masculinity today.
It's so funny.
we are in 2023 and the roles have flipped.
Oh gosh. Well,
Let's run it.
do you guys like? Are you guys in the whole fall thing?
Dude, I whipped out my flannel.
I was about to say, dude, you got the
First time
flannel
today
Love
for this
fall.
because it
Yeah.
felt very fall-like.
Are you guys pumpkin spice? Do you guys like the old pumpkin spice route?
We're pumpkin spice people.
Yeah.
Tell you what.
Yeah.
That
First
time-
season.
PSP,
First
they
season
call
only.
those pumpkin spice people.
It's the it's the season. It is the season.
It is.
And you know what else? You know what else is it's the season for?
Reformation Day. And deer hunting. You were gonna say.
Wait, not Halloween? No.
Surprise.
Reformation Day, but it's also the season of dating.
Oh.
Ever hear of a transition? What a horrible transition. No, yeah. So we're talking about dating today, and we thought we'd want to have a couple on to talk about dating. And what's cool about you guys is that you guys are pretty recently married. How long have you been married for?
832 days.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah.
Dang.
Do the math.
He forgets that every day.
Do the math.
Yeah, so pretty fresh. So you guys have been married for a little while, but also you're also fresh out of dating too.
Yep.
So that it'll bring kind of an awesome perspective. So I'm one of your hosts. I'm Nehemiah, of course, with Josh, but we also have the Anderson family. We got Noah and Maddie Anderson. So maybe you guys can just kind of tell us a bit about yourselves, maybe briefly about yourselves, and then one of you guys kind of explain how you guys came together, and then how we got here. Want to do that?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Go ahead.
All right, I'll start us.
Yeah.
So I'm Noah Anderson, married to Maddie Anderson. Used to be Cleefish. We'll talk about that. That last name matters. As we'll talk about how we met, I was in a class with her dad, Mr. Cleefish, so the famous math teacher at Rockford. So he's infamous.
Okay.
Came to faith after being struck by lightning.
Whoa.
Kind of a Martin Luther type conversion story. He shares his lightning story, so he's known for that. It's his way of masking.
Yeah.
I'm in school, public school, sharing the gospel with a room full of students. And so
Wow.
I fell in love with her dad my senior year of high school.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know Maddie yet. And so we'll talk more about that probably in a second, but that's kind of just how we met, was senior year of high school, and it's been awesome since.
Yep.
So what do you do?
Yeah, I'm the youth director at Magnify Church Northview campus. So I oversee grades 5th through 12th. It is a riot and chaotic, and it's a lot. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And we have our own little child with us today, 27
27.
weeks.
Yeah.
27 weeks old.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is the third trimester. So
Wow.
final months.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Congratulations, guys.
Yeah.
That is
Thank
so
you.
cool.
Yeah,
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. So you guys met in high school,
we did.
right? Yeah. You met in high school. How did you guys meet? Because these are always kind of fun.
Yeah. So I actually remember Noah from middle school. He had this big black eye. He's probably the smallest kid in his grade, but he was the toughest, roughest guy that I ever saw. And I was like, stay away from that guy. He brings no
Meanwhile,
good.
I'm wrestling at the 85-pound weight class.
Yeah. But then we officially met his senior year, my junior year, right at the end, third trimester. So just caught him on his way out.
Okay.
But yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Saw the guy with the black eye.
Yeah.
What a way to first see a little
Yes.
bulldog like that
Oh
running
yeah.
around.
Oh yeah.
That's so cool. So, can you guys kind of walk us through, since we're talking about dating, can you kind of walk us through what that process was like? Kind of just give us a story about the highs and lows and what you guys have learned since then.
Yeah, I'll share kind of how we met briefly, and Maddie, jump in whenever. But we met my senior year, so in a advanced conditioning workout class, which was
Those were
hilarious,
fun.
so fun.
Those are awesome.
Josh knows all about that.
Yeah.
And, just a riot. We both knew the teacher really well. Almost said Professor Cummings, Coach Cummings, and he would always like put Maddie and I together doing different things, and she was the only girl in that class who didn't care at all about just dripping sweat by the end of the workout. Like, she worked so hard. I know that sounds kind of funny, but she worked so hard, and that's kind of my first experience with Maddie. Was she caught my eyes like, I know you're a Cleefish. I know your dad's awesome. He's a believer, and I was like, this woman just doesn't care. All the other girls, they're like curling, and then like the coach would look away, and they'd be like, rest. He'd look, and then they'd do it when he's looking. And Maddie was like, she'd go over to other dudes who are like rowing 70-pound dumbbells and be like, hey, you done using that?
You done with those?
Excuse me, I'm up next. It was just like hilarious stuff like that. So
Wow.
that's what I first saw from Maddie. I was like, dang, this woman is like honorable. She works hard, doesn't care what people think. And
Wow.
so that's kind of how we met. That's where it started. And then we kind of got to know each other through class for a few months, and started dating like young. I mean, we were 18 and 17. So like I said, we'll have a lot more what not to do than what to do going off our experience.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys, can you kind of walk us through some of those then? I mean, we were talking about how, actually I said this to you guys before too, that my grandpa had a pretty bad dad. He's a mean guy. And so my grandpa would always tell my dad, hey, I don't necessarily know what to do as a good dad, but I know at least what not to do. And those face value might seem like they're rough and you don't want to talk about them, but the truth is the Lord can use that in extreme ways. So can you kind of walk us through what some of those things were?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
So
when we first started to get to know each other and become friends, within like a week of talking, Noah pops the question. He asked me he's like, hey, you want to be my girlfriend? I'm like, whoa, like this is really fast.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, yep, I'm sure. I'm like, I can wait. That's totally fine. Like we could just slow things down. But then we're like, no, let's just do this. And then 24 hours later, I get this text like, hey, can we talk? And so I always make the joke, within the same 24 hours, Noah asked me out and then also broke up with me. But it was mutual.
What?
So yeah,
there's your first don't, man.
Yeah.
There's your first don't.
Slow it down. Don't rush it. But then after that, we were able to work on our friendship and just have so much fun for months before we started dating again.
Okay.
And it was the best thing ever.
Did you guys kind of know? You were like, we will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. Yeah.
Okay.
Maddie actually scared me. She's like, one of the first times I hung out, she's like, so what are we going to name the kids?
Yeah.
And I was like,
Don't do that.
Oh, wow.
Don't do that, guys.
She was just messing with me.
If you guys have a boy, can you name him Nehemiah?
Dude,
for me.
You know what? You know what book I'm reading right now in the Bible?
Don't tell me read Nehemiah.
I'm reading Nehemiah. This morning I'm reading about Nehemiah. Building those walls, praying with such fervent heart.
That's right.
I love that name.
Yeah, I had a sword in one hand and a hammer in the other.
That's right.
I'm not arrogant. You are.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. So what kind of advice, I wonder this too, because you guys are younger, just recently married. You got to have some people coming up to you and asking you for dating advice. Is that true? I mean, some of your younger friends are like, dude, I'm in a situation, or going up to you, I don't know what to do with the guy. He's such an idiot. Probably get a lot of those. Yeah. I guess starting with you, like what are some of the big questions do you think you get from people asking for advice?
Yeah, I feel like the biggest one is, how do I know? Like, how do I know if he's the one, if he is going to be my husband? And it's kind of a simple answer. Like, you choose. Like, that is a choice that you make. It's not this divine, magical feeling that you're going to be like, one day I woke up and I knew. But it's a choice that you make day in and day out. And we learn that even in marriage. It's a choice to love each other. So when you make the choice, that's when you kind of know and are committed. And it's got to be mutual. Both choose each other. But it's a choice of the will.
Well, that's interesting. I wonder why nowadays that's such a big question. Because it seemed like that wasn't really a big question. Like, how do you know? I mean, we have way more luxuries nowadays than they did in the past 100 years or so. Right. So what's different? What do you guys think about that?
Carl Truman wrote a book on what he calls expressive individualism. It's kind of the culture, the air we breathe. It's a very much my psychological well-being is the most important thing about my life.
Me first.
Okay. And me only. And so I think that does feed into it. Yeah. Like you said, 100 years ago, that's a great point. 300 years ago, you didn't have a choice. It's like, well, if Maddie grew up in the village I'm in, our dads are both shoemakers, they work together, it makes sense that we get married and start a family. And that'll help the fabric of society, and that'll be a great way to flourish. Yeah. And now we kind of have a very individualistic just culture that says, I need to feel this amazing thing. It needs to be this perfect story. Yeah. I always, so going off that love is a choice thing, I always, I've quoted this twice now in a teaching on love. So what is love, right? That agape, you hear those words thrown around, those Greek words. Yeah. I give a story of, not to call it Will Smith, but to call it Will Smith. He's been in the news a lot lately, right? He gave this story of when he was married to his first wife, he was out to dinner with her, and he had this feeling. Yeah. That he realized, he came to realize in that dinner that he wasn't supposed to be married to this woman. And so he realized he was really in love with Jada Pinkett Smith, his now wife. Wow. And so he had a realization at dinner. He just left his wife that dinner, like that night. Wow. It's like he didn't know that. And so when you let feelings drive love, you get into a whole bunch of, you miss love entirely, and you miss
something. Me and the guys that are in a small group, let me back it up. The 5th and 6th grade small group that I'm helping lead, we're talking about how definitions of or in society or cultural definitions can and very often are different than biblical definitions. So like biblical hope and worldly hope are two completely different things.
Yeah.
And I won't get too into that, but kind of same with joy. But then love, right? And so love, as you mentioned, Maddie, is a choice. Biblical love is a choice. There's no, Cupid came around and struck you with the arrow.
Yeah.
This is my one person. This is the one person in the whole world. Like, how crazy do you really have to be to believe that there is one singular person out there for you? When how big is this earth that we live on? And so it's a complete choice, and we love because God loved us first.
It's interesting that like we have the one word for love. So you use the same word for love for your wife as you do with your coffee. That's right. It's a bummer. Yeah. And as you said, the Greek has four. Agape, phileo, storge, and eros. Is that right?
There you go. I think so.
And Hebrew has 4 as well. I guess it has about that much too. And the way that our culture sees love and romance and dating right now is far, far different, even than what secular culture looked at it as, 300 years ago, or even 100 years ago. But dangerous. It's a bit scary.
100%.
What about you? I guess I'll ask you the same question that I asked her in regards to what are you hearing from the guys? I could imagine you got a couple of spooked
young bucks
coming to you being like, I like this girl, but I don't know what. Yeah. What do you think?
The one I hear a lot is what Maddie mentioned, is how do I know it's the one? And then the other thing I'll say, so I'll say two things here. I'll answer Maddie's question, or her comment, and then I'll also say, I see a lot of men wondering, how am I going to provide for this woman? Bodhi Bach, a lot of people talk about. So before, in confidence, sorry, you told me that, but that's every guy, right? You feel that, I feel that still, like, I want to provide. I have a kid in the way. I want to provide. This is a big deal. And so I think Bodhi Bach talks about the 4 P's or something, or one of them is protector, right? Provider, protector, and you have all these other ideas of what it means to be a man. I think that providing thing is like, I'm a young man. I say I'm 19, right? I married Maddie. I was 20, proposed at 19. Maddie was hardly 18, right?
Yep.
Dang.
And just like, what's the first question her dad's asking me?
How
are you going to make money, man? Like, what do you, that's great. I love that you love my daughter, and it's awesome, but how are you going to make sure she can, I don't know, live, like sustain, have food in the fridge? You know what I mean?
He's like, I remember you couldn't count in math class, so how are you going to?
You weren't advanced in math. I know that for free. But yeah, that's a big one for men. I also would say with that question, as much as it's a choice to love, we know God is sovereign. And so what was that quote, Maddie, from, we were reading something last night from Susanna Spurgeon, Charles Spurgeon's wife.
Oh, well.
Do you remember what that said?
Charles mentioned to Susanna, like, hey, how are you praying for your spouse? Because they're here on this earth right now. They're alive and they're present. How are you praying for that future spouse? Yeah.
Wow. And so he said that to who?
His Susanna, which they weren't married at the time. So that would be his wife. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
And that's a beautiful concept too. Is I've heard Paul Washer talk about how what everyone's getting wrong is they're praying for a wife or a husband. Did you guys go to that conference? The
Puritan conference?
Yeah, the Puritan one.
No,
they had a Q&A about that, and someone asked, I've been praying for a wife, and he goes into the conversation about pray. Everyone's praying for a wife, for a husband. You should be praying. Or you should be praying for them, not praying that you would get one, because you know that they exist. They're out there, which in fact leads me to something I was gonna talk about, and I want to hear what you guys have to say. There's a lot of young people that are maybe they want to be in a relationship, but it's just not working out. Maybe they think, maybe they're sick and tired of getting rejected. Or maybe they're sick and tired of no guys coming up to them, whatever it may be. And they say, well, maybe I'm just called to singleness. What would you say to someone that would say that they're that maybe at that time in life that they're convinced that they're called to singleness. How do you test that? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's good. You want to go first?
Yeah.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, you can go.
It's hard. There's not a lot on this,
Mm-hmm.
right? In the scriptures, you don't see a ton of text on this. You do see Paul speak on it, 1 Corinthians and other places, but and maybe on widows, right? How they should act.
Yeah.
I would say it does come down to an internal calling, right? You said the word called to singleness. I think it does. It's similar to like a call to ministry or a call to some certain, thing in life.
Yeah.
So it really is internal.
Yeah.
It's hard to externally judge that, right? Because it's not like necessarily you look at somebody and say, "Oh, yeah, you are really invested in the ministry. You have all these giftings of church leadership, and we're going to call you to the role of a leader in the church," right? Well, you don't judge that of somebody's life and say, "All right, you're really holy and you're called to singleness."
Yeah.
Are you saying anybody who's married is not a holy man? Right?
I'd get like mad if someone told me that. I'm like, hey, you're called to singleness.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's just very internal, and it's something that the Lord just needs to give clarity on that.
Okay,
You seek Him in that, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with singleness. I know there are so many fruitful disciples that are single that have just given their lives to ministry.
Yeah.
And I think there's a tension that while you're pursuing and you desire marriage, that's a great desire. Rest with, okay, what if I am called to singleness? And that's, before I started dating Noah, that's where my heart was. Like, I'm not looking to date anybody right now. If the Lord calls me overseas, I'll go overseas by myself. Like, we need to rest in that tension of, okay, if the Lord's will is to be married, how can I prepare myself to be married? If the Lord calls me to singleness, how do I respond to that calling as well?
Yeah, because I feel, I got to be careful when I begin a sentence with I feel or I think. But no, what it seems to me like in Scripture, there are certain reasons to be single. I think perhaps if you struggle with same-sex attraction, that's something that if you're in the will, if you want to stay in God's will, I'm convinced that means that you're not able to pursue a relationship with the same sex, which would imply that you're called to celibacy, right? Another one would be for marriage, for ministry, I should say. For instance, Paul, he was called to singleness, and that's what he did. He was a minister, right? The Apostle Paul, and he talks. There's a famous verse too. Not many of you are, called to be in a relationship. If you are single, then count it as a joy, right? But what I'm nervous about is that especially a lot of young guys are using that as an excuse to be single, perhaps because they've been rejected or they get let off the hook. Because of course, as you know, and as we know as young guys, is that once you hit puberty and you go to middle school and someone tells you that you need to use deodorant for the first time, you're like, oh no, I gotta change my normal way of life? And it seems like a pretty easy out to be like, well, I guess I'll just be single then and be used for ministry.
Yeah.
But then that same guy is pursuing a career in architecture or something. You know what I mean? So it seems like you can't just say, I'm called to be single and continue not in ministry, I guess. Is this kind of making sense? Do you guys kind of agree with where I'm going with this?
I think so.
I think sometimes people use it as a bit of an out, and like, because truth is, for a relationship, you got to work for it, right? Yeah. I could imagine that you made him work for, you were probably just like, you can't just get me right away. You got to actually like take me on some nice dates. You know what I mean? And that's hard. Yeah. And I think a lot of young guys are kind of lazy with it, and
out of a fear of rejection, as opposed to I'm not called to be married. It's more of a, I really want to marry, but I'm scared. I don't want to make the first move.
Maybe I'm supposed to be single now. Yeah.
And one of the greatest things that Noah gave to me was this intentional pursuit in dating. He pursued me like nobody has before.
Wow.
And I have a past of just not great relationships and not a great experience there. But then when Noah pursued me, it was like, wow, this is a godly man that is pursuing the Lord, but also pursuing me. And I just feel so loved and so cared for. Yeah.
Wow.
It was,
Where did you learn that from?
That's a good question.
I don't know. It sounds a little. She's flattering me here. No, I mean, I had great godly leaders. I had dated somebody through in high school as well for a long 2.5-year relationship too that did learn a lot in that. And so it's kind of a second thing, young dating, like 14, 15. Like, what about that? Well, I wouldn't really advise it much, but I did learn a lot of like how to die to myself in a relationship, or even though I was so young, I was 15. I was just a believer. The family was super like helpful in discipling me. And, but the whole time through that, Pastor Stu Quackenbush was like constantly just like, he was such a faithful pastor and he just shepherded me so well. The amount of times I was in that man's office, like just crying. Yeah. You know, I was like needing him to listen to me. And I got more, you know, just so much helpful guidance. But I don't know. I think it was just what Christ worked in me at that moment. I obviously saw a woman worthy of being pursued with all I had. And so.
Yeah. And so how long have you been a believer for?
So I came to Christ. I was 15.
Okay.
So that would be 8 years. 7, 8 years.
So okay, gotcha. Yeah. So you were, what did you say, 15?
Mm-hmm.
So you were, you had been influenced by the Spirit for 3 years or so, and then you're like, and then you're able to pursue. So that's an interesting thing. And you had kind of brought up something that I want us to talk about, and it's one you guys mentioned. You brought up the one question that people have, and that's how do you know that it's the right person? And my question is how do you know that you're the right person right now? Like you say, 14, 15, probably shouldn't.
Yep.
Probably shouldn't right now.
Yeah.
Although there are some cultures even now where they're getting married at that age because that's in their culture. You're your own family at 15. You're providing for your own stuff. And also biblically too, Mary was 13 when 13, 14 or so when she had conceived and given birth to Christ. That's significantly younger than in our culture today. So how do you know? How do you know that it's time for you to get going?
Yeah. I'd say start with your heart and why you would want to date at the age. Why at 14 would you want to pursue a girl? If the outcome of pursuing is to get married.
Yeah.
You, just in our culture, you have high school, you have middle school to get through. So you have a little while until you will get married. Yeah. So I would say save yourself from stumbling blocks and become really great friends with great godly women.
Yeah. Engage with girls, engage with guys.
Yep. We do hear stories we have friends that met in middle school and they got married right away. Yeah. But we just wouldn't advise young dating.
Like dated since middle school, she's talking.
Yeah.
7th grade, got married.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
Rare, crazy stuff.
Right, rare.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So with that, I think it's important to bring up. You said hang out with guys, hang out with girls, right? Kind of get used to being socially...
not being awkward.
Not being awkward.
Guys,
yeah.
Guys.
That's way to put it blunt.
Mainly dudes.
Yeah.
So with that, because some would argue, and me and Nehemiah had a conversation, and you kind of mentioned it, you learn a lot from dating, and you learn how to treat your significant other, and you learn things, which is true, but there is an age maybe, and maybe not a definitive age like, the day you turn 18, you're ready to date.
Right.
But I think it's an individual approach. Each person is at different levels spiritually. Each person is at different levels with maturity and all sorts of things. So before you're ready, it's probably smart to grow and learn the opposite gender through just friendships and maybe in the church setting or with just groups of friends and stuff, right? Before even thinking, because when I was still a non-believer and I was unsaved, I thought, I can't have friendships with women. I don't see it working. It can't work. I either view you as attractive and I want to pursue something, or I don't. And so I was so black and white with it, but now I see the opposite, the other stance where you can have friendships and that can grow you before dating.
There's one thing I heard. Matt Chandler gave a sermon on he was on marriage, and a question was asked, like, when do you pursue? And he said, and I think I can quote it almost, I think he said, godly men should pursue godly women in friendship in hopes that it would turn into something more. I think it was just that. Yeah, godly men should pursue godly women in friendship in hopes that it would become something more. So it has to start with the friendship for sure. And I wonder what's the time to start that. And unfortunately, what I see is a lot of kind of like test driving. You know, I guess I have a problem when someone, you know, opens up their phone and I see, and I'm mainly talking to guys because that's kind of where my heart's at, and that's what I can speak more so to. And that's also, to be honest, where I see more of a problem in our society is with the men. Because when the men start to fall, then society starts to fall. It's all over in the Old Testament. You know, you see your men acting like boys, and then you see the whole thing tumbling. And I even say almost before every podcast, I say, today men don't stand because men don't kneel. So I'd say a huge, huge part of our problem goes back to the men and the lack of leadership. And also what I see in the young men is just a lot of kind of playing around with girls. You know, like I say, you open up their Instagram, they got 5-6 different girls that maybe they're not getting responses, but they're at least, you know, texting them, or a bunch of unopened Snapchats that they're just talking to multiple girls. And my problem is this, and I mentioned Paul Washer a couple minutes ago, but he gave a great illustration that, imagine you know, you hunt, right?
I do.
So you wake up in the morning and your truck's gone, and you're like, oh my gosh, where's my truck? And you're freaking out. It's 5 a.m. 1, you're supposed to go hunting. That's messed up. 2, someone stole your truck. And running around, you know, the cops, you call the cops, and everyone's looking for your truck. And then 3 hours later, I show up and I walk by and just kind of like throw you the keys and like, hey, I just wanted to take it out really quick. Here you go. Here's it back. You'd be so livid. You'd be mad. Like I say, I messed up your hunting trip, and I stole your truck. Now, you know, you guys are going to have a baby. You know, let's say you're going to have a girl. One day, you know, say you have a girl. As a sinful...
Can't name it Nehemiah then. That's a bummer.
You can name her Maya, dude. Hey, my middle name's Justice. You can name her... Well, no, that's pretty manly. I was thinking about the little girl's clothing store. Never mind. Forget about it.
Sorry.
So one day you're going to have a daughter. Now, you're a wrestler. You're a tough guy. I could imagine, even as a sinful man who's not yet glorified, if a guy, a boy, we'll call him a boy, he's not a man, a boy meets your daughter without him even asking you, and he just hangs out with her whenever he wants, and he's just texting her and just basically using her for perhaps emotional support, so that he can say that he's talking to a girl. Hopefully not for anything physical, but even just emotional, and they're just talking for a month and then on to the next. You would be even more mad than you were when I took your truck. Now elevate that to a divine level where you have young men texting girls and just Snapchatting them and DMing them and just, you know, walking around like kind of like looking at them a little bit, or like brushing shoulders a little bit when they walk by, but they're doing that to a daughter of the Most High. Now you're in trouble, because you're just what's your goal in talking to this girl? I've heard it said that one of the most dangerous things that a godly man can do is to pursue a godly woman, because you're not playing with just anyone's daughter. You're playing with the King of Kings' daughter, and that's a very dangerous place to be in. And so, I don't know, maybe I'm just letting off some steam right now, just because I see a lot of young guys just kind of, you know, without any real intentions. Either maybe they're too scared, or they're not willing to commit, and they're just talking to the girls. That's scary to me.
Yeah.
You brought up emotional. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
You brought up emotional support as like the reason for that, and I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Get to the reason of why you're doing that, because it feels good. It feels good when you have a lot of girls wanting to talk to you. It feels good when you can, basically at your own, you know, by your own manipulation, can just, that girl didn't want to talk to me, I'll move on. And you just fill up your phone with, right? Get to the why, because that's a secure man doesn't need that. He's secure in Christ. He knows he's loved by God himself. He's been freed from any judgment. His sin has been taken care of. He's totally secure in the ultimate way.
Yeah.
An insecure man, I mean, you'll tell a lot about where somebody's security's at by how they talk to women.
Yeah.
Because obviously man is made for woman. You go back to Genesis, like it was very good, right? After 6 days, right? God says it's very good only after he makes male and female, or, man and woman. Because, well, the woman is made for man. And so in general, the pattern is that men would marry. Yeah. Not that singleness is wrong by any means, but that's the pattern, because there's this wonderful union between man and woman. We're made for each other, and it's supposed to be this, on all levels, amazing experience. Yeah. Hard experience because of the fall. But that's why, so it's so tempting as men to go, I'm just going to talk to my woman because I feel secure. I feel this like really, my butterflies in my tummy, and it feels good to be wanted. Yeah. Well, like you said, you're totally disrespecting and disregarding this daughter of the Most High.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
Yeah, on in 1 Corinthians 7, at the end of the chapter, it talks about, I just had it. Essentially, it is not better to marry or be single, right? It's depending on how you're living your life, it's just as glorifying to God depending on what you're doing. You're not better if you're married, you're not better if you're single. Like you said, there's nothing wrong with singleness, although woman is created for man. So it's kind of one of those paradoxes that you hold hand in hand. And I kind of wanted to transition into, I put up a poll on our Instagram account and asked about some questions maybe the young viewers would like to talk about and discuss. And we had a few replies, and so I want to say thanks for those replies and engaging and helping us come up with good questions for the podcast episode. So going into a couple of those, this one might be a little generic and maybe even kind of a blunt answer, but how far is too far? Specifically while dating, right? Be as blunt as you want.
I'll answer that for the comfortability of my wife over there talking to three men about how far is too far. I always heard this. I thought it's very blunt. You shouldn't be touching anywhere there's underwear.
There you go.
Right? Like, okay, that's a fair, very obvious answer, but it's like,
it's true.
But it's so easy to go, but it's not sex. It's not sex.
But where's the line of lust, right? Exactly.
Yeah, right. And so that's if you're talking about in a dating relationship, how far is too far? Well, obviously that. Yep. But hugging, if there's lust in your heart, is too far, right? Like there's it all goes back down to the heart. And so
it's it's person to person, really.
Yeah, to an extent.
To an extent,
right. To the line I gave very bluntly, that one.
Yeah.
I would say that. I think it's very honorable when someone says, I'm not kissing till marriage. It's like, all right. Yeah. Doesn't mean it's for everybody, but it's just like that could be a very helpful thing. And you're gonna stay far from any lines being crossed. So
I just wonder why we ask that question. How far is too far? What's the motive of your heart? Yeah. Why do we view it that way rather than, okay, how can we glorify our God as much as we can through this relationship, rather than how much is too far? How close can we get to this line? Rather than going the other way, how can we make this a worshipful? How can we make our dialogue, our physicality, whether it's holding hands, whether it's a kiss, how can we glorify our God in this relationship? So I think there's a problem with asking that question, though I understand why it would be asked, because it's not dating isn't black and white in the Bible, but thinking about our heart is we're supposed to come with a motive to glorify our God.
Yeah, it's so good to remember that we are judged on our heart's motives, right? Like if you're drinking alcohol, which is by no means inherently a sin, as long as you're of age where you're living. If you're looking at it like, oh man, can I get one more without being drunk? Oh, one more. Then it's like, where is your heart? Like, why are we asking the question, right? Like, how far is too far? And it comes down to your motives. What is your heart's true desire? But as you said, Maddie, I can see why that question would be asked for sure.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah.
And one other question we had was, how long should we wait to marry, right? Like, or even engage, right? Or to propose, should I say? How long would that be? And that's probably more, again, person to person, relationship to relationship. Where are you at to provide financially? Like, there's a lot of different factors with this one, but if you could give somewhat of an answer, that would be nice.
Yeah. Minimum 10 years before you propose.
Whoa.
No,
And then be engaged for 17 years.
if you're under 50 getting married, what are you doing?
And die unmarried.
And you can only... never mind. I'll stop right there.
I've heard this a lot. I had a good buddy just say, and buddy and mentor say, spend a year with her, man. Just spend a year with her. I don't know how, I always hear the statistic. This could be totally wrong, so don't take this to heart. This is just something that I have thought of. I thought it was interesting. A lot of people break up after 8 months, but I've heard other studies that say, oh, no, really, it's so-and-so months. But after 8 months, you really do start to know somebody because you hit a hard spot. You hit, the emotions aren't super high. You don't have butterflies anymore. That thing that Maddie used to love about me is now super annoying all of a sudden.
What is that thing?
Nothing.
Nothing.
I'm not annoying
just
at all.
Theoretical.
Only literally everything I do. No, theoretically, not talking about us, right, Maddie?
Yeah.
When you hit that rough spot, you see the real person. Funny story here. This is funny. Maddie's dad, funny enough, said, when you really want to get to know, what a woman's really like underneath, take her on a river. Go canoeing on a river with her. And then run her right into the bushes. He's like, you'll find a lot out about, how this woman responds to conflict, to pain, to hardship. He's obviously joking, but there is something to see when you see them run into conflict. How are they going to actually respond? It's easy to be really nice and flowery and loving and, selfless when your emotions are high and you feel good because Maddie's giving me a lot of attention and it feels so good. So my buddy told me, spend a year, you're going to run into some issues there and you're going to have to work out some stuff that's going to be a very helpful tool to see where is this person at, because it's easy for me, especially it's easy to put on a face, a facade. So
my mentor of mine says 4 seasons. Go through 4 seasons. Like you say, go on a river, like you'll know what someone's like in all the 4 different seasons.
Go on a hike, go up a mountain,
literally get chased by a bear.
Make it hard, make it so you're gonna see
rob a bank together.
Yeah.
Rob a bank together.
Yeah, but at the same time, we hold what we started off the episode kind of with is love is a choice.
Yeah.
And so going through those seasons, going through that year, seeing if you can continue to choose love with this person, both of you. Yeah. And so I guess we were just talking about Instagram and how we had some viewers give some input on some questions. I wanted to talk a little bit about how social media affects dating. And at the same time, kind of a dual question or kind of a statement. Dating isn't even a biblical concept. It's not even really a term you don't find in the Bible. So dating alone is kind of already like, it's kind of up in the air, a little bit of a gray area as it is. But I guess we will just focus on how does social media affect relationships in today's society and culture?
Yeah, I think it's the culture. There's the sex indulged culture that affects dating. It's all about sex and pleasure rather than the pursuit of marriage and family and a family unit. And I think that's what's distorted, is it's all about me taking, and it also separates sex, which is a good thing created by God, and a person. Like, it's now just a screen. And I think that has affected dating and sex. And I know you have read books on this, Carl Truman. You have anything else to add?
Yeah, that's great. He doesn't talk much about like social media, but it's definitely, you see that it does not help the expressive individual culture of just, it's all about me and expressing who I really am. And when you tie who I am with gender, and then you just send it out to the masses on social media and the major news networks, and the cultural air we breathe is very much tying who I am and my sexual expression. And so that's more what he would say. But yeah, that was wonderful.
Wow.
That's okay.
So I got a comment on that too, because I've heard this little short story. There's a story about a old man who wanted to find the most beautiful cat in the world. He wanted a nice little house.
Why in the
cat.
world would you want a cat?
Are there any beautiful cats?
Actually, let's. Thank you.
I hate cats.
Hey, thank you for this. Wait, do you like cats?
I used to not like them, and then I kind of came around to
No.
Dude,
How do you become a
they're
cat
not bad,
person?
man.
Just
They're
say
not
no.
bad.
Just go ahead and say no for the sake of the.
Yeah.
I hate cats.
Thank you. Me
There we
too.
go.
So we'll change it to
Can I get that on
dogs.
my focus and that's in the clip?
We'll change it to dogs.
I really do.
So,
I love dogs
he
too.
went out looking for the most beautiful dog in the world.
There we
All
go.
right.
Dogs are amazing.
Exactly.
And
It's more
cats can be.
realistic.
So what he went out and he looked all over for just the perfect dog, and then he climbed over the hill and he peeked over the hill and he saw hills and hills full of different dogs of different sizes and different looks. And he picked one up and he said, "Oh, this is the most beautiful dog in the world." And then one walked by. He's like, "Oh, no, that's the most beautiful dog." And then another one walked by and he's like, which one is the most, which one should I pick?
Yeah.
And now because of these, we get access to all kinds of different people, and
Keeping options open.
exactly. And so you see, oh wow, that's a different girl, or if you're a lady, you're like, oh, actually he's got an 8-pack rather than that guy who had a 6-pack. And then the first guy didn't even have one. Turns out they're photoshopped in.
He had a no pack, they call those.
No pack, that's right. You got a 2-liter.
That's right.
And so, but do you see where I'm going with that? Is that we have so many options, but because of that, we almost have
None.
It's almost like we have no options.
Yeah.
And so, and like you said, if a couple hundred years ago, your dad's a cobbler, my dad's a cobbler, want to get together and cobble? You know, that's kind of.
That's exactly how it went.
Hold on a second. Cobble means make shoes, dude. Okay. But I mean,
No
that's
idea what cobbler meant until right now.
Dude, I just eat cobbler, bro.
So I think cobbler makes shoes.
I'm sure.
But anyways, so that's a thing where can you guys check on that? Yeah.
Jamie.
Jamie,
Yeah, Owen,
Owen,
can you let us know what a cobbler does, please? But yeah, what I mean, and I love your answer too, is that it's over sexualized people, and it's almost, I don't know, maybe even be more dangerous for women, because it's now women are forced to be. Do you have an answer?
The person who mends shoes.
Yep.
Nice.
There we go.
Bingo.
That's right,
There we
son.
go.
But anyways, thank you. It's made it dangerous for women, because now women are more forced to show more of themselves, and of course this may perhaps be more so for women who aren't believers, because then of course what you have to ask next is about modesty too.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, I want to switch it up. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
It may be a bit of a scary question that a lot of the guys are wondering.
Okay, bring it on.
So the question is, what are we doing wrong?
What are you guys doing wrong? Is that
So a lot of young guys might be wondering, they're asking a girl out. Maybe they're just not getting any hints. I've heard the phrase dropping the hanky. It's up to the guy to pursue, of course, but it's up to the girl to drop the hanky.
Sure.
And almost subtly kind of say, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
But you get some guys that are just not playing the game very well. They're not, I mean, I guess you name it. Where
What are
do
the
you
red
see?
flags?
Yeah. And so if you could please let us into the mind of a woman, because I'm sure that you have these talks with your girl, your gal pals, saying these guys are idiots.
Yeah.
Why won't they just do this?
Yeah.
So what's missing? Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. The magic answer. I'm just kidding.
Be a millionaire.
Yeah, be a millionaire.
With an 8-pack.
Yeah.
Oh, don't say anything else here. 6 foot.
Noah's not 6 foot, by the way.
Hey, hold on.
For the
a second.
viewers.
6'2". Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, right.
Does that question kind of make sense?
Yeah. I don't know if I have this magical answer
Right.
because well,
I guess, I mean, like, what do you think might be lacking?
what might be lacking in men?
Yeah. And honestly, this could be for
start, right?
Yeah, like, where do
to
you start?
Man.
Do you have anyone have an idea?
Yeah. I don't know. Noah and I were kind of talking, like, Noah asked the question, hey, what would you tell somebody if a guy's pursuing them, what characteristics should she be looking for? Mm-hmm. So I'll list what my answer was for that. Maybe that'll be helpful.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
you guys can be like,
Yeah.
am I missing these? And then maybe that's your answer. Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
But I said,
That's what we want.
okay. I said having a consistent character. So your characteristics are consistent.
Yeah, okay.
I want women to date men that are pursuing the Lord and pursuing sanctification. Not that they'll be perfect.
Yeah.
Because back to the dog, there's always going to be, Noah and I talk about this a lot, like there's women prettier than I, there's men more handsome than
Watch it.
Hey.
we talk about this. There's always going to be somebody that's better in some way or some form.
Yeah.
So to pursue a guy that's pursuing her, that is on the pursuit of sanctification. So how can I be perfected in my faith? Not that he is perfect where you find him, but that he is striving to become more Christ-like. I think that is so needed. And then what else did I say? I feel like there's one more.
Yeah, I know. I'm blinking.
Yeah.
You said make sure they're just like Noah.
Yeah,
I think
just
you said
like
something
Noah,
like that.
yeah.
I don't know.
Oh,
what you said.
goodness.
Yeah, no.
I think along the lines of that, though, I
No,
think
funny.
they need to, and I was kind of going to ask, like, when are you ready to date? And there's no kind of blanket answer for that, but you need to be ready to lead a relationship and eventually lead a wife with, like spiritually. You need to not only be a provider physically with those needs, but also spiritually. And you need to be that emotional support as well. And so there's a lot of areas where I think both genders need to have some form of spiritual maturity, specifically speaking, the man who needs to lead that family, that potential family, to Christ and in that relationship centered around Christ, right? So you were kind of saying how 14, 15, probably too early with maturity and what we see in culture today, and where is your motives, and they all kind of tie together. And I like how this conversation is kind of tying all together and all the questions.
I remembered my last point. He needs to see women as worthy of great value, a precious gem, not just something to maybe date. Maybe I'll date this gal. She's just a gal, but to actually value her with great worth. And that's something that Noah, I knew that he valued me. He valued my thoughts. He valued my relationship with the Lord. He encouraged me to pray. He was a huge discipler in my life because he valued my spiritual health, because he valued me.
So you saw while you were dating him, you're like, oh, we're not even married, and he's already leading my heart.
Yes. Yeah, in a way.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And it was a unique situation because I had just come to know the Lord before I knew Noah. So I was figuring all this out, learning about the Bible, learning about all these things. And then I didn't have Christian community, and then I didn't have any friends, but I had Noah, and he was a huge help, just teaching me what he's been learning. And it was super fruitful and just a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun learning about our God.
Wow.
So those are a lot of things to look for. What about boundaries? Because me and Nehemiah were talking, what's a good, or actually it was me and Alex, you hear, on one hand, you hear, the perfect first date would be go see a movie together, and then you hear others say, no, that's not smart at all. And I think what I came up with is it's probably, again, motives of your heart, but then boundaries with, like, if you're going to be the only two in the room watching a movie with a blanket on, dangerous, very dangerous, not very wise at all. But then on the other hand, I guess what I'm asking is, you hear certain people say certain things about first dates or maybe different boundaries, but what are some good boundaries, general rule of thumb, to maybe hold strong to and really not dance on that line? Like, have strong boundaries when you're going into dating, and even if you've been in a relationship for months.
Can I say one more point about the last comment and then we'll go back to boundaries?
Yeah.
That's a great question though. So Maddie, you heard her mention, she said, there's always somebody prettier or better looking than Noah, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't like to say those things, and it's like, that's going to be your heart. You have a sinful heart. When things go wrong, the temptation is the grass is greener.
Yeah.
And so when I'm dating, how can I avoid anybody that's going to not be, who can take me, perfect, right? Take me from this reality that I'm never going to feel the grass is greener. That won't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So what you need to do is I'm going to put my love upon this person, similar to what God does to us. We were just at a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Many of you probably know. I won't say names just for the podcast.
Oh, come on.
But we're at a wedding and they quoted, I think it was from Numbers or Leviticus. I can't remember. I should know this. Bible major's ridiculous. But it was the quote from God where he says, I didn't choose this nation because you were many in number or you were great. I chose you because you were tiny and less than.
Yeah.
And I put my love upon you. And so it's like, that's what they shared in their, basically for their wedding. And you're going, the culture would go, wait, you're saying this person isn't like this spotless, perfect person? Yes. That's exactly what I'm saying. There is going to be a 6'8", very handsome man with all the features, big jawline, whatever you want to say, all those things that the culture would look at and say.
Bald head,
soon to be. I'll be there in a few years. And the world's going to say, that's a gorgeous person, right? That man is handsome. Well, you can. I am of the persuasion that you can very much choose, and not gonna be easy, but work at, because beauty, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. That whole thing. There's something so true about that. I saw the depravity in my heart. That whole finding the newest dog, not cat, the dog that's more beautiful. It's like it's just never gonna happen. Like I feel like I choose to put my love and I think I make myself go, my wife is the most beautiful woman in the world because I'm choosing to love. And so for us to be like, she said I'm not the most handsome. Like no, she can choose that. Like it's not like she's saying I don't think my husband's it. No, but it's this reality of. You're always going to be tempted to say the grass is greener. Will you choose to love that person to say, I'm making you beautiful. You are so beautiful to me.
Yeah.
That's not an insult.
Yeah.
Right? That's what God says to the nation of Israel in a very beautiful way. That is true love. The other, saying, I love you because you're this, that, and the other externally, that's called conditional love.
surface value.
Exactly. So anyway, back to boundaries. Sorry about that.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Disruption. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate or share on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening from. You can also support us financially on our podcast website. The link for that is in the description below. Tune in on Mondays. We'll see you next week.